So I'm assuming that most of you have already seen President Donald John Trump's speech at the United Nations, which happened yesterday, which was wide-ranging and scathing towards many world leaders in terms of their conduct in relation to the issues that affect the world, but in particular with issues that affect their own nations. He went in on deep on European leaders in terms of how they have in the past, say, 10 years, have destroyed Europe. And he is calling them to make Europe great again. It's actually wild in terms of what has happened to Europe in the past 50 years. Europe has not grown in terms of their economies in the past 50 years. Europe has not gone anywhere in the past 50 years. Europe yielded its manufacturing base and factories to Asia. Europe gave up on manufacturing almost 30 years ago and yielded everything to Asia. And in the past 10 years, they've been continuing to concede their advantage by destroying their nations with uncontrolled immigration and all of those climate change lunatic policies. One way to look at this perhaps is to look in terms of that Europe, for instance, in Europe, there is not a single country in Europe that has an economy that is larger than China's. Not a single European country has an economy that is larger than China's. I'll even take it further and say that when you take the entire European Union, and you take the GDP size of the European Union, only when you take all of it is it comparable to China. Okay, let's take it further. Germany is the only European country that has a larger economy than India. Germany is the only European country also that has a larger economy than Japan. So you have 3 Asian countries that have larger economies than all of European nations, with the exception of Germany, for China. Can you believe this shit? Where China has a larger economy than Germany, and where Germany is the only European nation that has a larger economy than India and Japan individually. And then you have South Korea as well. South Korea. Understand, by the way, that the European Union, if I don't count the European nations who are not in the European Union, I'm just going to limit my discussion on the European Union. The European Union has 27 nations in it. 27 nations. But of these 27 nations, there is only, in the European Union, there is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 European nations who have a larger economy than South Korea. Out of 27 nations, only 5 nations in the EU. Fuck that. Only 5 nations in the entire continental Europe. If I exclude Russia, for instance. Only 5 nations in continental Europe, if I don't put Russia, if I exclude Russia, because Russia is obviously in Europe and Asia. If I exclude Russia, only 5 nations in continental Europe. That includes nations in the EU and nations in Europe that are not in the EU. Only 5 of those have a larger economy than South Korea. Folks, can you believe this shit? Let me take it further than that. Then there's Indonesia. Only 5 nations in Europe. Only 5 nations in Europe. Out of nations of more than probably 40 nations have a larger economy than Indonesia. 5. That would be Germany and France, Italy, Spain, the United Kingdom. Do you want me to go further than that? Then there's Taiwan. Taiwan. Small little country, not even recognized by many countries in the world. Small. You know how many countries in Europe have a larger economy than Taiwan? Out of the 30, maybe 30, 40 nations in Europe, these are the number of nations in Europe that have a larger economy than Taiwan. Switzerland, Poland, Netherlands. Okay, you can put in Turkey there if you want. Spain, Italy, France, United Kingdom, Germany. So how many are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 8. 8 nations in Europe have a larger economy than Taiwan. Let me tell you something. Europe is not as strong and as powerful as I think it is. Europe yielded its advantage 30 years ago to Asia, and Europe continues to lag behind Asia in many, many respects. And now that Europe decided to open up its borders around 2012, 2013 to uncontrolled immigration, what do you think is happening? And then now the madness of this climate change bullshit that's been happening in Europe also in the past 15 years. What do you think has been happening to European nations because of that? So this call by President Donald John Trump to Europe to make Europe great again is way overdue. Way, way, way overdue. If Europe does not change course, Europe is basically on its path to being like Africa. Everybody knows Africa is not in the game. Africa has never been in the game. Africa is not even trying to compete with anyone. Like, Europe is going in that direction. If things continue the way that they are going, the only players in the game are going to be the United States and Asia. Those will be the only players in the game. The United States and Asia. And all the conflicts and power dynamics and great power conflict and conflict on whatever, chips technology and semiconductors and AI and all of that crap. All of that right now is between the United States and Asia. Europe is not even in the game. Every single thing that is innovation, competition is between the United States and Asia. Europe is not even appearing at all in these important competitions and discussions. If Europe continues in this fashion in the next 50 years, you would have 10 Asian nations having bigger economies than every economy in Europe, maybe except Germany. And then a few years later than that, you'll have all of those nations also having a larger economy than every European nation, including Germany. That speech that President Trump made in the United Nations is critical, it's urgent for European leaders. European leaders need to stop fucking around and start taking their people seriously. You folks need to stop fucking around and need to get back in the game. Whether I like it or not, we need a strong Europe. As much as we need a strong America, we also need a strong Europe. Because if we do not have a strong Europe, America alone is not going to be enough to counter all of the other evil forces that we face in the world. Dictators, autocracies, and all of that crap. And if you don't have economic power, you don't have military power. Nobody cares what you think or what you're saying if you don't have economic power. That's one lesson that South Africa has realized recently. When it comes to global conflict, the first thing is that put your dick up. And your dick up is how big is your economy? And the way that things are going right now, 20 years from now, most of Asia will say to Europe, put your dick up. And you are not going to be able to answer that call. I'm warning you. I hope that all of you listen carefully. Cheers.